Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So my next interview took place at the Hilton in Toronto. It's a little noisy in the background, but I don't think that's going to be too much of a distraction for you. And we met with director Geeta Gandbhir and Roy Lalonde, who actually appears in the film. And I'm not going to tell you a lot about that because I'm hoping you're actually going to get a chance to see A Journey of 1,000 Miles. Peacekeepers is the subtitle. It's a great film. It's a remarkable film. It's about 5 Bangladeshi women, policewomen, who go to a UN peacekeeping mission in Haiti after the earthquake, and it's in the write-up, a true mission impossible is the phrase. And so Geeta Gandbhir, co-director of the film, alongside of Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy, who won the Academy Award for Saving Face, by the way. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us for the interview, but we talk about, in her words, a kick-ass story about Muslim women. And I think that there is a whole lot going on in this film. You're going to enjoy the interview. I think you're going to enjoy the film, so check it out and stay tuned. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We are at TIFF, the 40th anniversary of TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival. We're sitting here with, can I Staff Sergeant Roy Lalonde? Can I say the star of the film?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
And with Geeta Gandbhir, filmmaker, and her partner Charmaine, who's not here with us today, who is also co-director.
Yeah, co-director and co-producer.
Thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate it. So I guess one of the reasons I was drawn to this film, I think, was from an international perspective. Most of my listeners will know that I'm a social justice guy. I'm about trying to make a difference in the world, the splash and ripple effect and so on. I'm trying to get my head around what this movie actually was really about. Is this about gender? Is it about doing no harm? Right? There's a lot going on in this movie, and thank you, by the way, and congratulations.
So I would say off the bat, Charmaine and I really wanted to make a kick-ass story about Muslim women. That was the really first and foremost when we were making this film. We were both, obviously, she's Pakistani, I am Indian, and the depiction of South Asian women in the media, we felt like we could add to it in a way that was interesting and different and positive. And I came across the story of Indian women in the news. I came across the story of Indian women who are deployed from India to Liberia. And that was a couple of years ago, and they were deployed, they'd been sent out for about 10 years. So there was a rotation going, and I thought that was a fascinating story. And then when we realized there were women going from Bangladesh, that became even more interesting because of the aspect of the religion, the women being Muslim. So that's really what the film was meant to be about. Of course, as filmmaking, I like to say, is like an onion. As you peel back the layers, it's either like an onion or an artichoke. As you peel back the layers, the more you cry, or the better it gets at the heart. So, or sometimes it's a combination of both. And I think it was a combination for us with this one, because there were many challenges, but also we got to tell the story of these incredible women, and who are very brave and are kind of groundbreaking for their country. They're doing things. Again, they were the third rotation to go to Haiti from their country, and they're sort of laying the groundwork for what's to come.
Was waiting for Staff Sergeant to jump in there. So I love the fact that you're smiling so much. I mean, it tells me that you're clearly a pretty hopeful person, And I think coming out of the film, one can sort of, on one hand, go, there's a lot to be hopeful about. There's some really great things going on in the world. And then you go, well, but hang on the other hand, we can tackle this from a gender perspective. We can talk about social justice. We can talk about the poverty that we see in Bangladesh. I mean, I love the one line from one of the women who says, oh, I thought we only had poverty in Bangladesh, right? And so when I think of a cross-cultural experience, I think of, sorry for this, I often think of, not always, the Westerner going global north, global south, right? Not the other way, not sort of the other way around. So I found that really fascinating, that it really is, this film really is working on a lot of levels. And by the way, there's just too many women with guns. I think I need to just say that right out of the gate. There's just too many women with guns.
I would say that we also found it really fascinating, the perspective of these women who are coming from what is, for all practical purposes, known as a developing country, and then they are sent out to what is also a developing country. It was very important to us, however, that Haiti, we think Haiti is a really critical issue in the film. Haiti is a country, we feel that the spotlight has sort of moved. The media's attention and just the world's attention on Haiti has sort of waned. And we think that for people in the West, it's sort of, the onus is upon us. Haiti is in our backyard. There are people still living in dire situations there, and that is really also critical. The women were really a vehicle.
Geeta, in a sense, aren't we all kind of in each other's backyards? I mean,
Yes.
Isn't that sort of a message of the film?
Yes, but I do feel that in the West we can disconnect easier from things that happen, per se, in countries that are far. You know, Haiti is 3 hours flight from New York, where I am based, and from here perhaps an additional hour. And it is, I think, and interestingly, the conditions there are, as the women from Bangladesh noted, you know, they were surprised by what they saw in Haiti, as far as the poverty. And they also understood the struggle that the people had, that they were essentially, as the women say in the film, their anger is justified. When there were protests, they understood that the women understood. They were like, the people are hungry. There's hunger, there's poverty. Of course, you know, what else are they to do? So, you know, they should be up in arms. So, but that was, I think, as you said, you know, the eye of the Westerner is, the Western lens is so often what we are used to referencing in our media and in the films that we make. And, you know, it was for us important to have something different.
So I've done a series of interviews, and I want to ask you a couple questions real quick here in a second, Roy. But the theme for me so far has been about listening. The three directors that I've spoken to about a couple of the films, Ninth Floor, Mina Shum, and Embrace of the Serpent, and so on. It's about other cultures and so on, just being cross-culturally aware, I guess. And one of the women, I think one of the police officers that went over, said something to the effect of, and I felt frustrated for her, oh, if I only knew their language. Or if I only, you know, and this frustration of just being sort of parachuted in. And that's, I think, I mean, obviously both of you can answer this, but, you know, Roy, in the film you talk about would you call it marksmanship? I don't know. What do you call it? Gunmanship?
Yeah.
I don't know
Weapons handling, I guess.
Weapons handling, and you're concerned about the lack of training and the lack of preparation, I guess, for these women being dropped into such a difficult situation.
It's a long story. I really knew nothing of this project. When I arrived in Haiti, my job over there was basically to provide training to foreign police units. And in Haiti, there's approximately 11 foreign police units, ranging from people from or countries in countries that were involved in the FPUs were India, Jordan, Bangladesh. You have Rwanda, you have Senegal. So you're dealing with various cultures, and when you talk about the language, the frustration of the lack of understanding the language, you know, that's just part and parcel with the UN reaching out to contributing countries to get involved. Unfortunately, not everybody is going to be French speaking or English speaking, so they make do with it. But going back to the Bangladesh FPU, I had the opportunity to attend Bangladesh on 2 separate occasions for training and to do an evaluation prior to an FPU coming into mission. And it's unfortunate when you look at, I'll use Canada for example, we're 34 million people across this country. And then you look at Bangladesh, 65 million people. They're providing, I believe Bangladesh is probably the second largest contributing country in the world for FPUs. They're pretty much in every ongoing mission right now. And but it's unfortunate the training level that they're given prior. And you know, I got to see it firsthand, and unfortunately, you know, it's discouraging. But you know, we're somewhat, I guess, helpless to what we can do at this time, other than, you know, provide the training, the recommendations, a lot of feedback to New York. But you know, when you talk about the women coming into mission unprepared, it was almost expected, just given the, you know, I guess the foundation that Bangladesh police had given them prior to coming here. So now you have women in mission operating an SKS, you know, 7.62 rifle that was pretty much brought into inception in 1950s, and they're given that type of equipment to go into the field and protect themselves and protect others. You know, they've never had. I bet you they probably might have had 25 rounds fired in mission or in their country before they come into a zone here. So, but yeah, going back, I guess getting a little off track. My job was simply to go and evaluate their operational readiness and to see what we could do. And you know, like I was telling Geeta, when you first get there, I know what they're coming from. I know what the training they were given prior. You know, it's a business, and we've talked about this. FPUs is a business. And sometimes they forget that. They forget that the human factor here, that these people need to be prepared once they boots are on the ground. But in my job over there and in my other missions, it was the same thing. Just go there, do the firearms, do the public order, bring them up to a speed where they can defend themselves and defend others and protect themselves. You know.
I think, you know, when you say it's a business, it comes out in the film. And I went to, sorry for no comparison here, but Armageddon, the Michael Bay film. And I think they're being fired off to the asteroid. They're going to drill on it. And Steve Buscemi's character says, it's not really that comforting to know that this went to the lowest bidder, you know, building this ship. And in a sense, isn't that kind of what you're speaking about? Like, so you know, we'll take these countries because they bid lower.
I'd love to get into a deep conversation here, and I'm sure that at the end of the day, I'd probably get myself in hot water. But when you think about the developing countries that are involved in these peacekeeping operations, and you know, if I was to tell you that the financial aspects, that, you know, it would be disturbing, because I'll tell you right now, you would not get any Western country that would participate in this, just because, you know, I'll tell you flat out, you know, an FPU officer probably makes $1,200 US a month. So when they go into mission, you know, someone from Bangladesh making $1,200 a month, that's 4 times their salary. So for them, it's a huge benefit. It's you know, it's an opportunity for them when they go back home after a year to put themselves in. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, to put themselves in a financial position, provide for their family. But you ask somebody from France or Italy or England or U.S. to leave their family for a year and to work under those conditions with meager earnings, nobody would do it. Nobody would do it, regardless of that sense of duty. At the end of the day, there has to be some compensation, and I don't want to focus on that. But these people, and I can tell you wholeheartedly, they don't look at the finances. They don't look at that $1,200 a month. You know, somebody from Bangladesh getting the opportunity to put a UN patch on their sleeve, that goes a long, long way.
Well, so can I just, and either of you, of course, but the job kept coming up so much in the film. There was so much pride. It seemed behind the women going, and I think I totally get that. You know, I'm not going for myself, I'm going for us, or I'm going for you. You know, one of them said, I'm going for my son, and so on, because of the money, I suppose. But also, there was a sense of ownership there, right? And you said you want to make a kick-ass film about Muslim women. Well, these are women that want to kick ass.
This is, and I think,
right?
I think I can say, you know, I can speak to the fact that spending the year and a half with them, that these women really, it's a great source of pride for them. You know, they feel that they want to see progress in their country for women, and they want to serve their country. And as one of the women, Maushami, in the film, she says that she sees her children, her family, and her country as equal. And she, you know, she basically says, will go on mission for a year. When I come back, my children will be here, but I may not get this opportunity to serve my country again. So it is tremendous for them. And they also understand, they're very clear that they come from a conservative country where this role being offered to them is something sort of unprecedented, that they are, and Bangladesh is leading the world in many ways. It does lead, and basically as a sort of Muslim country, it is leading in sort of trying to push the agenda of women's rights and progress for women forward. I mean, they have made a tremendous effort to move women into politics, and girls' education is really critical. And there are obviously still some large problem areas, but coming from where they started, the progress is tremendous. And I think we can sort of look at the women what we know is, have to spend the time with them, and as Roy did too, it is a work in progress, right? Change doesn't happen. Change takes generations. And these women are sort of the beginning of it. They are, like I said, the third rotation to go out. They have come back. They are now working. They're training, recruits with their experience in mission. The training they got from Roy changed their life, and they say it in the film, Roy. But you will.
Well, and even had an impact on the policing they're going to do back at home, right? The police work
this will change. This will change us forever. This training will last us forever.
So I'll try to deal with some of the chit chat in the background, but we'll cope with that. We'll cope with that later. So the enormous sense of pride, and yet one of the things that I thought was really interesting too was and I don't know if it was Farida, who said, I'm a policewoman, but I'm also a mother, or I'm a soldier, but I'm also a mother, and I don't know if I've ever heard a dad say that quite the same way. I don't know that I've ever felt that. I'm a social change consultant and a philosopher and a dad. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you know what I'm trying to get at?
What's so interesting, obviously their role in countries like Bangladesh and in India and in many parts of Africa and just throughout, the woman is really the cornerstone of the family. She has a tremendous role in the house, and she's seen as holding the household together. And then for these women, they have to juggle this dual role where they have to still fulfill all these roles within the home. They have to take care of their husband, their parents, their children, and then they have to go off and work as well. So for them, they see, and all the roles are important. Every role sort of carries the same weight, and then there's also fallout, or should I say, there is pushback if they don't fulfill them well. As you saw us from, there is Farida's husband has a hard time with what she does. But I think what's interesting is I feel like these women face some struggles that I think in the Western world at this point, women may not. There's a different, progress has been achieved here for women in a way that it is still ongoing there. It is still, it's still developing. But what we did find is that these women are determined to keep their independence, no matter what they face at home.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. I mean, if that's not the understatement of the year, I'm not sure what is.
But they in turn, I believe, will pass that on for their children. Like basically, they want, as you say, one of them says, "I want my daughter to go further. I want my children to go further." And her son looks up to her when she returns. Her son says, "I want to be a big shot police officer like my mother," and that. You would never hear that.
Yeah,
huge.
No, that's a big deal anywhere. Never mind,
see,
right?
Also in the film, you see sort of what was important to us too is to sort of show this progress. There's a scene in the film which Charmaine always mentions where you see the men sending the women off and and they're in tears and holding the children, and the women are on the bus also in tears, but leaving. And that is kind of. And you don't think about that. It's a complete role reversal, and yet it's happening, and no one thinks of that when they think of.
Well, it's a huge commitment for anyone. I don't care who you are, mom, dad, soldier, teenager, to go away for a year to a country that you don't know of, to protect, to help, to come alongside. I think it's a risk. But I think for the most part, and again, I apologize. I've got their names, but I can't remember if it was Musimi maybe who said, I never get sad.
Oh no,
right?
That was Rahana.
Okay, Rahana. So I just there's just this sense of hope, and you see it sort of fade a little bit, I guess, throughout the film as they're kind of waiting to go home, and they're packing up their boxes and so on. It's really quite wonderful. So, Roy, I mean, this is a film about empowerment, and yet, I mean, I guess you've served in a lot of these kinds of situations.
It was my third mission, yeah.
Do you go in feeling empowered and come out feeling disempowered? I mean, there's a sense where you're kind of thrown into the fire, from the firing. You know, there's like, we could come up with a couple of cliches or metaphors, I suppose, but you're there to come alongside, capacity build, etc., and yet you're not necessarily. I don't know, positioned appropriately, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it doesn't.
So you don't have the resources that you
No,
need.
we're limited.
You
We're
seemed
limited in our
frustrated in the
resources.
film to me that this was look what we're dealing with over here, Mr. and Mrs. UN,
Yeah.
and you guys can't even train your troops.
And you know what? At the end of the day, like I said, you know, sometimes my thoughts get ahead of me, and probably sometimes it should be my inside voice. But at the end of the day, I've always been steadfast, and I felt scared for these officers because the UN was asking them to perform a certain task, even though everybody around them knew that they were probably in more danger than we realized. So that's why we put a lot of focus. We put a lot of focus on when you talk about capacity building, when you talk about empowering them. You know, I had the opportunity to travel the world, and I had the opportunity to spend some time in Bangladesh. And you talk about the culture. Sorry. You talk about the culture where the women are predominantly, and I don't want to say meek and mild, but they're asked to be somewhat subdued. And here I am asking them, you know, fresh in a mission to be aggressive, to be forceful, to take on the responsibility and the leaderships for them and their colleagues. And I forget sometimes that because I'm not from that culture, and it's easy, and it's easy for somebody watching this film to say, well, they should or shouldn't do this or that. Put yourself in their shoes. And when you talk about leaving home and how difficult it is, I had the opportunity to do 3 missions, and this was my third one. And my wife has always said it best, because she is the cornerstone of our family. If you think it's hard leaving, she goes, try being left behind. And she goes, that's the worst part. She goes, that is undoubtedly. She goes, you're excited for the adventure and the challenges, but she goes, try being left behind. And I think of the women of Bangladesh, and I think of their families. But it's different for us. It's different for most Europe, most people, I'll say, from Canada going into a mission. Because I know that in a month or month and a half, I can fly home and see my family. They can't. But when going back to, am I frustrated at sometimes? You know what? I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because I'm nervous for them, because I'm scared, because sometimes the people in certain positions are asking them to do something, and Haiti was no different. Asking these FPU members to go out and do a task or secure an area or take on a deployment or a patrol, when we all knew the risks. But I refuse. At the end of the day, I refuse, and I made it clear at the start that until I believe that they're ready to defend themselves and they have the skills, the knowledge, skills, and ability to work well in that mission, I said we have to limit their involvement. So I'm frustrated, but I think I was, I got more out of the training than the women do, and I do, because I do enjoy it. I do enjoy seeing people when you talk about empowering themselves, getting that sense of accomplishing something. A small thing is such as the women never get to touch that AK-47, and I don't want to get into the aspects of weapons, but they never get a chance to do certain things. And now here I am, a lone person, saying, no, you're going to give them this, and you're going to let them do it, and you're going to let them experience it. And when you see one of the officers, she's so proud in the film that she gets 10 out of 10.
Yes.
She gets 10 out of
Yes.
10.
The grouping was wonderful,
the grouping,
by the way.
But it's also amazing for me, because I'll go into that camp or another FPU, I should say, and you see somebody that just picks it up, and then I empower them to say, okay, listen, you're going to show the others how to do this. So the pride, you just see it. It's overflowing, and that's what keeps me coming back to work with the Bangladesh FPU. To me, it is, and I have no issues, and I go back in a heartbeat.
So Geeta, are you? Did you feel empowered after the film? You finished editing. You've watched it the first time. Is that you're in Haiti. I mean, we don't hear a lot of good news these days, and things are, I would imagine, getting better. I haven't been on the ground ever, actually. I was going to say recently. A friend of mine was just there recently. A lot of problems in the world, right? Splash and ripple. How do we get involved? Journey of 1,000 miles, right?
Well, it's interesting. The title comes from and it's sort of, I feel that we felt it was fitting for the woman. There's a saying that peace is a journey of 1,000 miles, and it begins with a single step. And I felt like these women in this year, that was sort of a metaphor for what they went through. For them, it was like a journey of 1,000 miles. They had to take it one step at a time. And each step of the way, there was something unfamiliar, there was something new, but they made it through. Roy, actually, well, you'll see, but the women, I think, got far more out of the training than you may realize. They really were, they felt so different. As you said, they to be able to actually, to be, I think the way that once they received the training from the UN, they felt empowered. They felt like someone was finally taking them seriously.
And I'll just cut in real quick, but it's sometimes I used to sit back and I used to try and cover myself, laughing because here you would be this meek, mild, quiet female officer, and then one of the male Bangladesh officers would come over and she'd put him in his place in 30 seconds, and I was always going, oh my God, good for you, or to see one of the officers, follow the guidelines and say, okay, no, I'm going to take this, and I want this equipment, I want this and this, and we're not going until this is ready. And then to have a male officer question them and they say, no, we're doing it. And I used to sit back and I used to catch myself going, good for you. This is exactly what we want to see.
That's right. And they learned from that. But I think to speak to your bigger issue of the ripple effect and the world, I think when you make a documentary film, often until it's out in the world, it's kind of like having a baby. Like the pregnancy is sort of the production period where you're making the film, editing it, and then once it's out in the world, it's born. The film really.
So the medal ceremony was June 2014, but preceded by a year. Is that right? So
yes.
What are we?
So
2.5 year, 3 year project?
It was 3 year, if not longer, because development. We were knocking on the UN's door for quite a while, for about a year, before, trying to figure out logistics of which FPU we would follow and how we could make it work, and then putting our own ducks in a row, our funding, et cetera, et cetera. And getting the support we needed so that we could do this. It was a huge project. We were dealing with multiple countries and multiple teams and visas and all kinds of letters to this bureaucracy. So, but at the end of the day, now that it's out here at TIFF, honestly, it's premiering here. We couldn't have asked for a bigger, better festival. And we're thrilled. We're thrilled. I feel like it's now that I'm actually finally
and so
holding
you
the
should
baby.
be, because I think it's some people will look at the poster and go, oh, that's a film about the UN. Well, hang on a second here. Let's just back up and ask a couple more questions and peel back a couple of those layers that you were talking about earlier. What I love about it is it's so multi-layered. I mean, you could talk about poverty. We could talk about cross-cultural effectiveness. We can talk about extreme poverty. We can talk about listening. There's so many, but really, like you said, this is about strong Muslim women. I got to ask you this. I grew up in a faith-based environment where the men on the surface looked like they were, in charge. And clearly that was just not the case, right? And so, we'd go to church and but I would hear the drive home, right? Or you would see the evening afterwards and the way the women would interact, and yet the men would have to present, or they would take the pulpit, or they were the ones who would speak, and so on. It seems to be pretty across the board, and we're kind of breaking away from that more and more. And yet, you see a film like this, and the I don't know what's up with the men in the world. what won't we let go of? Is it power? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's.
If you see, some of the men in this film are tremendous examples of, they are very egalitarian in their relationships with their wives. Mao Shami's husband, for example, says, and again, this is the men, and some of the men in this film defy the stereotypes. I mean, he says, everyone should work in the home. It is better for the future. And my wife and I both work.
I thought that was brilliant.
And we have a great understanding, and this is how it should be. And she can, even though he was completely miserable without her, and he makes no bones about it.
Which is so funny, by the way. The comedy of that.
The men all falling apart.
Falling apart at the seams.
And it's expected.
Near the end, is that the guy whose wife is cleaning out the fruit? The durian?
Yes,
Durian? Is that a durian fruit?
It's a jackfruit.
Okay, that's like the biggest jackfruit I've ever seen. But that's a hilarious scene.
We ate it.
Because he's leaning against the wall. Yeah, go ahead. You can go again.
No,
but I was a
but
mess,
at the
just
same
so
time,
you know.
It was like I was miserable. I spent a year in misery. Like he was so.
Oh, he's funny.
But the whining and complaining from the men too, after about like the year that they were gone. Meanwhile, the women sort of deal with all this all the time. The year of taking care of the kids. Oh my God, But yeah, it's very funny. But I think.
So are men just lazy? Is this what it comes down to? Because I gotta tell you, as I'm watching the film, I'm going, holy smokes, am I like this with Elizabeth? Am I this much of a whiner?
I think we're dependent sometimes, and that's what it comes down to.
But I think in any culture that is patriarchal, of course, there is you are born into a certain privilege, right? And it is true of race and sex and race, gender, etc. When you are born into a certain kind of privilege that you take for granted, often to whether or not you might deserve it, sometimes. And I think that is sort of, obviously in Bangladeshi culture and South Asian culture, that disparity still exists between men and women. The film shows that it's changing, though. You do see that these men are for the good of the family, and also, there is progress. So I hope that their people do walk away with that feeling that it actually can be different. That ISIS, which is dominating the media, is not all that's out there.
So I so hope, and I think you are going to. I mean, often with these types of films, to me, because I teach in this as well, you think, wow, we're just preaching to the converted, right? Because the cynics are going to remain cynical, and they're going to disparage about the UN and about nonprofits, and you're spending too much administrative money, and you're not making a difference, and then the others on the other side. So it's a polarization of it. But what about those folks who are sort of in the middle, who you can get to?
Well,
and I think that's what's so great about a film like yours is I don't think it certainly didn't for me. It didn't polarize the issues for me. It just kind of lays them out there, and a lot of entry points.
There's definitely some people, as you said, where we understand. Some people, no matter what we did or said, or showed on film or however it went, who would not necessarily agree with, that there is a hope for progress in this way. I think it is, like you said, it's anybody whose mind may have been maybe open, perhaps it will open further. That's always the goal. Again, we know that progress takes time, and some people never change their minds about anything.
Well, I have a friend who just unequivocally doesn't believe that you can change. You are what you are, and I don't know if this is some sort of genetic predisposition on his part that he believes in, but I tease him about it all the time.
It's a convenient argument.
It is very convenient, isn't it? Well, listen, thank you so much for your generosity today and your candor and your openness. I always say that I wish and I hope we can have a part 2 to this conversation. It's just, we just barely scratched the surface, but congratulations on the film. And is it actually opened at the festival yet?
It is premiering tonight.
Premiering tonight. Excellent.
At 9:30 p.m.
And the full title is Peacekeepers,
Journey of 1,000 Miles, Peacekeepers, and it's premiering at 9:30 at the Scotiabank Theatre.
And my guests, Geeta Gandbhir and Staff Sergeant Roy Lalonde, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.